August 1968, week 32, 173. After school, I found Mom whispering into the phone in the kitchen, wiping tears from her cheeks as she sat hunched at the table. When she saw me, she hung up and dapped her eyes with a tissue. "Was that Dad?" I asked. "A friend." And I knew she meant that guy. "Ash, there's something you should know about." But then the front door opened and Dad walked into the kitchen. Reading the surprise on our faces, he said, "I still own this house, even if I don't live here anymore. I came to pick up a few things." The shock of seeing Dad made Mom ready for a fight. "You could have called." Dad stared at her, then at me, and sighed. "I tried," he said, "but the line's been busy for more than an hour." Raw tension smoldered between them, a standoff just like old times. But Dad ended it by going downstairs. Taking a deep breath, Mom rested her head on her hands. "This is a real rugged patch for me, Ash, and I'm going to need your help to get through it." The doorbell rang, and before I could move, I heard the door open and Dad's annoyed voice. "What do you want?" Mom paled and dropped her hand to her belly. Angela's voice. "Is Ash home?" "At my front door, with my dad." I got up so fast my chair crashed onto the floor, but I arrived too late. She saw me standing behind my dad and smiled. "Hey, Ash." Dad stepped back, took a long look at her, then turned on me. "Who is this?" Icy slivers spiked his voice, and I felt hearts and hopes and doors slamming shut as I fumbled for answers that would satisfy my father and my hippie girlfriend. August 1968, week 33, 159. Angela and her mother brought dinner over Wednesday night. When she heard about Dad, she insisted on doing something to help. "Mom and I know something about loss," she had said, "and it's no fun dealing with it alone." When they walked in, it felt like they breathed life back into our home. Angela's mom hugged my mother like they were long-lost sisters, and Mom's eyes teared up when she met Angela. "I'm sorry about what happened the last time you came over, Ash's dad." "Well, let me just say I'm sorry, but I am delighted to meet you." After eating, we went downstairs to watch the evening news. But when a report on the war came on, I jumped up and changed the channel to a news program about a massive high-rise office building project that was getting started in New York City. "These twin office towers," said the reporter, "would be the world's tallest, a permanent monument to America's ingenuity, capitalistic system, and democracy." Mom started laughing. "Isn't it ironic that we're bombing the hell out of one country while we're building monuments to our own greatness?" The room fell silent. I felt the awkwardness of Mom's political statement, but seconds later, Angela's mom said, "I hear you, sister." August 1968, week 34, 308. The attention from Mrs. Turner really helped Mom get through some rough days, but still I worried. Sometimes after work, I'd find Mom in her bedroom, panting and moaning and dripping with sweat. I never felt so weak and desperate. If Mom went into labor at home, what would I do? What could I do? Call an ambulance and hope it would get her to the hospital in time? What if something went wrong, complications, or worse? If I lost my mom, the baby, or both, what would become of me? August 1968, week 35, 408. Pounding dirt in the pounding Arizona sun darkened my skin and hardened my body, and Ruben Ortega made me appreciate the broiling heat. "You think this is tough," he said. "Try a couple of days in a muddy foxhole with mortar shells dropping all around you day and night." He'd stare into the distance and his voice would get ragged. "Never knowing if shrapnel or a sniper will nail you while you're sweating in a stinking hellhole, just hoping to make it through the night." Then he'd snap out of it, focus his eyes on me and say, "Don't never go to war. If they don't kill you, it'll break you, and you'll be digging ditches with burned out war vents in 110-degree heat the rest of your life." Working with Ruben changed how I read the weekly casualty reports. He'd seen buddies shipped home in body bags. He'd been splattered by their blood. He'd heard their panicked cries and choking death sobs. He'd lived through the carnage and knew some of the 408 men who died last week. To me, they were part of an abstract number, but to him, they were real, flesh and blood men sacrificed at the altar of war. I tried to make it real, but to me and most Americans, the men who died were just part of a tragic count that changed each week. By the end of the summer, when I read the casualty reports, I remembered the haunted, wounded look on Ruben's face when he talked about the war, and I earnestly hoped Kelly wasn't part of the tragic tally of dead in Vietnam. September 1968, week 36, 195. The Democrats named Hubert Humphrey as their man to face Nixon in November, but their convention exposed all the conflict in the world today. Protests in Chicago led to police violence that seemed un-American. Trouble also exploded in Paris, Prague, and cities everywhere. It wasn't just Vietnam, the world had gone nuts. The first day of school felt simultaneously new and old. Students jammed the halls, buzzing and bragging about all their summer adventures. My summer had been a bummer. I didn't feel like sharing at school. And looking around, I wondered how many kids were walking, wounded like me. Our summer scars didn't show, but the pain and damage lingered. Angela met me at my locker. We held hands and walked to Mr. Ruby's room. When he saw us, he grinned to welcome and told us to choose our own seats, so we claimed the same desks as last year and waited for class. 195 was written on the board, and I knew that his new course, Contemporary Civilization, would deal with today's real life. September 1968, week 37, 217. My father nagged me to leave Mom to move in with him, but I knew I couldn't abandon her, especially so near to the baby's birth. He tried bribery, legal coercion, even intimidation to convince me, but that stuff just shoved us further and further apart. I did agree to meet him for lunch at Pete's Fish and Chips one Sunday after school started. He looked like he hadn't slept well for a long time. I got my food, sat facing him, and prepared to listen to his pitch. He made it clear that reconciliation was out of the question. I know our marriage was broken, Ash. Your mother and I haven't seen eye to eye on much anything since you were born, but we tried to hold it together for your sake. He blinked back tears. But this betrayal is more than I can bear. She has shamed me and you and herself, and you have no idea at all how much this has wounded me. I'm going to fight for you, Ash, and I'm going to make her pay for what she has done. She doesn't deserve either one of us anymore, and I'll spend my last dime to make sure she and that bastard baby are completely cut off. She's made her bed, she can sleep in it. He leaned back and stared at me. It's going to be scorched earth, son. No prisoners. All or nothing. And you are going to be with me or against me.